After spending the night at an old power station in the middle of the woods, the remaining group members woke up first at dawn to set off by making some progress on getting to that town. They only had a couple of supplies left for the group's a day worth of baby formula left for AJ. It was just like the motor inn situation again. They prayed and hoped that this town wasn't going to be a bust. As per usual, Lee had led the group down the path. Clementine and Sarah held behind him, while Bonnie behind them, Mike, who was behind Bonnie holding the baby, and Luke, who was now able to walk under his own strength without any assistance. They offered to help him walk, but he assured them that he could walk. The group, as they kept walking through the snow of the forest, Mike turned around towards Luke for a moment, just to see if he required any assistance. "Are you sure you're okay?" Yeah, I'm alright," Luke assured. Having a limp was moving without him having to move on his own. "If I could start to lose my own balance, I'll let you know." Mike nodded in agreement as he turned around to face towards the others again and continued walking. "Okay, if you do, let us know. It's no trouble at all." "I think we're almost there," Lee informed the group. As was said, he looked and kept his eye up on the power line. If they could keep following it, then surely it would lead them to a town eventually. He hoped so anyway. Otherwise, he had no idea how they were going to get there. He could only hope and pray for the best. Mike turned towards AJ for a moment when he heard him whimpering slightly, meaning he was going to cry soon. He slightly became nervous for a moment, unsure of what to do. He's crying. What do I do?" Mike was about to offer to take him, but then she remembered yesterday that Mike did not want her to help her take care of AJ. Now it was her turn to take the revenge on him. "Oh no, Mike, that one's your job." Mike grinned in response when he just realized he was trying to get everything back at him at the events yesterday. He began to improvise simply by rocking the baby side to side, with it speaking to him in a normal tone. "Hey, don't cry, alright? No need to cry. Everything's good." He noticed this and began not working, deciding that to stick his tongue out at him like Clementine did. Mike put his face back to normal, relieved to see it worked. He watched as AJ merely stared at him now. "Phew, glad that worked." "I think he likes it when you put your tongue out at him," Sarah admitted, after she'd been watching AJ closely, in case if Mike had gotten in more trouble than he did. He was more nervous than she was. "Yeah, probably," Mike agreed, looking back up at her at where he was going. Well, look at Mike the big babysitter," Bonnie teased, slowing herself down slightly for her and Mike to walk at the same speed level. "You're welcome to take him any time," Mike offered, but he had the feeling that it was not going to work. Bonnie merely looked at him, shook her head in response when she saw this right through him. He's all yours, Mike." Mike rolled his eyes in response, knowing he was defeated before he even asked. He continued to hold AJ in his arms, with it following the group in the line, but occasionally he would look back to see if Luke required help. The group continued walking through the forest, remaining in silence as the cold air whistled through the ears and sent chills up their spines. The group was without freezing, and it could be even worse when they made up far north. They wanted to find shelter and find somewhere warm and food and fast as possible before nighttime arrived. That would just make things much worse. Lee continued marching through the snow until there was something that caught his eye that caused him to halt in his tracks. He placed his hand up, beckoning for the group to stop. He could not believe it. For once, they were looking in the way. "We're here!" Everyone looked inside, surprised they had made it into town. There were a couple of stores alongside the road, a big building that looked like a museum, and a church. It was not very big, but it was certainly better than anything. "You think it's safe?" Bonnie asked, concerned if this town was actually deserted or not. "Could be full of walkers or people." "Only one way to find out," Lee admitted, taking his Glock 17 out from his back pocket. He turned back around to remain to face the group members, and they issued instructions for them. "The faster we do this, the faster we can keep moving. Clementine, Sarah, I will check those stores. Bonnie, Mike, and Luke, you all check that church and that museum. Find whatever supplies you can find, and we'll all meet back up here. Sound like a plan?" "Yep, sure, on it. No problem." "All right, if you encounter any walkers, you know what to do," Lee reminded them, as he turned around and proceeded to make his way towards town, Clementine and Sarah walking behind him closely. Now that they had their assignments, Bonnie, Mike, and Luke made their way over towards the church first. They hoped that they would encounter any trouble along the way. But with Mike and holding AJ and Luke's injured leg, this was going to make it difficult. Let them luck holds out just for a little while. Lee slowly entered the first store, leaning for the glass door with his Glock 17. He surveyed the room inside the store for a moment, that he was able to clearly see the sun brightening up the place via a window. He got the feeling the store was clear and walked inside, holding the door for Clementine and Sarah to walk inside. Clementine walked into one of the shopping aisles, and with a hopeful expression rose across her face when seeing those supplies. She quickly picked up a bag of chips and read the back of the label, and did even more to her relief. They were not expired. Look at all this food, and it's not expired too. They even got baby formula for AJ. Wow, Lee smiled, surprised that they were not going to find a couple simple bottle of water, let alone full store of food and drinks. Looks like things are looking up. Okay, we should get as much as we can. We'll all spread out, but don't go far. If you find something to carry them in. Clementine nodded in agreement and did not hesitate to get some food and drink. She could not remember the last time they had a lot of food to eat, with the exception of many times they served beans and peaches at the ski lodge. She gathered as much as she could and hoped to make it quick back before the walkers showed up. Sarah searched around the aisles a moment on her own, but she was quite cautious in case if there happened to be walkers roaming around the area. She was so hungry and wanted to eat everything here, but she could wait a little longer. When Sarah leaned up around the corner, her foot came across a contact with something, with riddled falling onto her stomach. She was about to cry for help, fearing that it was a walker that was going to get up and bite her. She leaned up and adjusted the glasses, signed relief when it was not a walker, but instead it was a black duffel bag. She seemed to be empty, and she then tipped over was an empty bag was a mystery. Nevertheless, she saw this opportunity to find something useful. She picked up the empty duffel bags and ran back towards Lee, who remained in front of the store, keeping watch with it grabbing the food at the same time. Lee, look! I found these bags we could use to carry the food. Good job, Sarah, Lee praised. That caused Sarah to smile proudly. He accepted one of the duffel bags and began to fill it up with types of food. Why don't you take the other bag and go help Clementine? Yeah, sure, Sarah obliged, ran over to her best friend, who was not far away. She dropped the duffel bag in front of Clementine and began to help her. I found these bags, and Lee said I could help you. Nice job, Clementine praised, picking up all the food that she got so far, dropped in the bag. She continued doing so for a moment, until she stopped and held the Twinkie box in her hands. It brought her back memories, her memories that remembered of what her life was when things were peaceful. My parents always used to give a Twinkie every Friday. They sometimes go give me two on special occasions. Oh, I love Twinkies, Sarah admitted. I never thought I could get another Twinkie again in forever. What did you eat back at the cabin? Clementine inquired. Unfamiliar with the group's lives back there, she, Lee, and Carly had joined them. Pete and Luke always used to get fish for dinner almost every night, and we used to drink juice boxes and would water for something to drink. Sarah answered, whilst that she continued, picking up the food and packing them into the bag. She then turned back towards Clementine, only to realize she did not know anything about her backstory. What about you, Clementine? Where did you guys live before you met us? And how did you get food? Clementine had stopped filling the bag for a moment, and to think back more than 2 years ago. This was getting harder and harder to remember everything that occurred in the past. When I was 8, Lee found me in my home, and we met up with other survivors and lived in the motor inn for 3 months. We had a new guy who joined a group named Mark. He was nice and brought a lot of food for us, but we ended up running low, and it became hard, even for Lee. With the last of our supplies, Lee only had enough food to feed 4 people, and there was 10 of us all together. Did he give you something to eat? Sarah inquired, eager to find out. Yep, Clementine nodded. He gave me an apple, gave my friend Duck and his dad Kenny a box of cheese crackers, and gave Carly some beef jerky. I bet everyone else was starving, Sarah wondered, knowing the feeling of what it was like to not have food for so long. Yep, Clementine repeated for a second time. She was about to tell Sarah how they met the St. John's, but that would not be the best idea. They were at the worst as the walkers. She decided to skip that part for now. Now, we found an abandoned car on our way back to the motor inn when we were out once. It was full of supplies that someone left there. Did you guys take it? Sarah asked, hoping the answer was no, since she was taught by her father not to take things that were not theirs. I told him it wasn't right to take it, and Lee agreed with me, but the rest of the group did so anyway. Clementine answered that caused a sigh of relief to Sarah. She could not imagine what she would have happened if she did take the food. Maybe Sarah would have lost respect for her. Oh, that's good, I guess, Sarah admitted, taking one more handful of the food and dropped into the bag. The duffel bag was now full of food, and it would last for a long while. If they were careful, perhaps it could make it even last longer. That was possible with Lee there to lead the group. The two packed the bag together and made their way back over towards Lee, who had just finished filling his own bag. Even with the two of them holding it, it was still pretty heavy. Hey girls, got everything we need? Lee asked, Wizard lifting up the bag, placed a strap on his shoulder, holding it across his bag. A lot of stuff, Clementine answered, groaning slightly as she felt her arms were about to give out. It's pretty heavy though, Sarah admitted, her too struggling to hold the bag much harder than Clementine, even though she was way older than her. Here, I can hold it, Lee offered, accepting the bag from the duo and held it in his right hand. He didn't seem to be struggling at all to carry both bags, but he had the feeling they would slow him down slightly. Are you sure? Sarah asked, placing her hand upon her arm. She did not want Lee to hurt himself by carrying that much weight on him. Isn't that heavy? Don't worry, Sarah. I'll get Mike to carry the other one when we regroup, Lee assured. Wizard lifted the second duffel bag up and placed it over his shoulder. He took out his Glock 17 again as they made their way back out towards the store exit. Come on, we should check out the second shop. Even with all those food, we could use some ammunition. What's ammunition? Sarah asked, obviously unfamiliar with that word. It means bullets that you put into a gun, Clementine explained, as she took out her own gun and emptied out one of the clips. You put them there to fire the gun. You'll understand better someday. I hope so, Sarah responded, and by the looks of her face, she looked uncomfortable holding a gun. She was shaken up when she had to shoot the man the previous day that caused her ears to ring and her hands to hurt. For now, it was time for the trio to head back out and searching for the town. Their next location was a store right next to one of them that looked like a gift shop from the outside. Sarah took a couple of more candy bars and stored them in her pockets before following Clementine out of the store. After being issued by their orders, Lee, the trio, Bonnie, Mike, and Luke stood outside the church and stood outside for a moment, preparing to head inside. The other building, which turned out to be a museum, was a bust, and it had nothing useful at all. Hopefully Lee, Clementine, Sarah had found something better, like finding some supplies. Bonnie approached the church door with her Beretta 92 FS and Ox pistol. She swiftly opened the door and aimed her weapon inside, slowly marching inside. She quickly checked her surroundings for unexpected visitors, but by the looks of it, it was empty. All right, come in, it looks clear. Mike, Luke made their way inside the church. Luke was struggling due to his leg, but with their weapons armed, they closed their doors behind them and began to make their way down the aisle. The building was not very bright and was almost covered in darkness. They needed to be careful inside, especially in the darkness. What can we find inside this church anyway? Mike asked, not expecting to find anything useful that they could see inside. You never know what you might nowadays, Mike, Bonnie replied, checking the seats for a moment for any walkers. But it seems to be clear now. Let's just make sure this place is clear. We have to look around. Luke looked around too much in the church while he was limping, but could not help but get a raised smile when happy memories began to appear in his mind. I remember when I was younger, I used to come to church every Sunday with my parents. I used to always moan, saying he hated wearing a suit and tie. Man, those were good times. Sounds like you had a wonderful mom and dad, Bonnie stated, but her expression changed to a normal tone from a sad one. She lost her parents a long time ago, even before the Walkers had risen. Her mom died while she was in her teenage years, and her dad ran away a long time ago and never looked back. You know, I always used to. Before Bonnie could finish, she was unaware of the danger, completely off guard of what happened next. A dead walker standing by the wall covered in darkness, wearing a priest's robes, emerged out of nowhere and attacked Bonnie. It knocked her down to the back upon itself, trying to get on top of her, trying to take a bite out of her flesh. "Oh, frick!" Bonnie screeched, quickly placing her hands on the walker's shoulders, attempt to reach it from biting her. "Bonnie!" Mike shouted, immediately charging towards, and the second he saw she was in danger. He first had seized AJ into one of the pews and charged over the walker like a rampaging bull, delivered a power kick to the walker's stomach. Knowing that him and Bonnie saving her life for the second time. Mike quickly bounced around down the walker to hold it against its stomach to keep it from getting up. "Quick! Killed it!" Luke quickly limped over towards Mike and pulled out his machete from his holster. He quickly jumped down and stabbed the walker directly in the side of its head, killing it and putting it out of its misery. He panted for a moment as he sat back up, placed his machete back in his holster. "It's okay. I got it." "Jesus, that was so close," Bonnie admitted. She was helped back up to her feet by Mike. She checked herself for any injuries, but as luck would have it, she was safe and unharmed. Her expressions and her gratitude towards Mike. "Mike, you saved my life again." "Thank you." "Don't mention it," Mike assured. With it, he made his way back over towards AJ and picked up the young baby in his arms. He walked back towards the others, who were now even more cautious than after that recent attack. "We should be more careful." "Alright, I'll search around for anything useful. You two keep an eye out," Bonnie instructed. With it, she made her way back to the bottom of the aisle to search for supplies. And this time, she had her Beretta 92 FS Anox pistol armed, just in case she ended up being caught off guard again. And without Mike there, that would not end well. With it, Bonnie was searching. Luke groaned for a moment as he sat down at the end of one of the pews. His leg was hurting slightly when he had to run towards Bonnie and put a little bit more pressure on it than he should have. "You okay, man?" Mike asked, concerned for Luke's condition. "I'm good, don't worry about me," Luke assured, lifting his bad leg for a moment to check if it was bleeding again. But fortunately, he was fine, and the cloth rag was holding. "I could, with some morphine, though," he joked. "I think we should all have something to take the pain away," Mike admitted, with a slight grin across his face, too. He sat down at one of the ends of the pews. "We still got that rum? Bet you could use another drink." "I think Bonnie's got it," Luke replied, looking over towards the direction Bonnie walked off to for a moment. She turned back towards the church exit for a moment, but could not help but show concern for the others. "You think Lee, Clem, and Sarah are doing all right?" "I'm sure they're fine, especially with Lee on the team," Mike answered, but he did not know that for certain. "We'll just have to wait and find out." Before long, Bonnie had returned, and by the looks of her face, she seemed happy and was quite surprised, especially after a near-death experience moments ago. She revealed something in her hands that was an emergency medical box filled with medical equipment. "Look what I found, guys. Bandages, painkillers, and other things. We can help heal those wounds a little better with this stuff." "Good. My leg is starting to hurt like hell," Luke replied, using his AK-47 as a crutch for the moment, to help him stand up on his feet under his own strength. "Well, at least we found something useful." "Something's always better than nothing," Bonnie stated. With it, she took a hold of her backpack and placed it in the medical box inside. "Well, we'll take care of everyone's injuries once we're all together again. Come on, we better go meet up with the others." Bonnie led the way outside. Wiz and Mike and Luke followed her outside. She could not help but wonder why she was alive after all this. Not after she was ungrateful for being saved, but after all she did, lying to Clementine when they first met that led them being kidnapped, claiming Carver's actions were accidental, and all those lives she helped ruin. After all that, but why was she the one to be still alive? Rebecca and Carly were good people, but they're dead now. Questions would have to wait until later. At this moment, Bonnie would want the group to regroup with the others and join whatever they were going. For the second time, Lee leaned against inside the store and carefully checked inside for any walkers. Like the last door, the coast was clear. He made his way inside and held the door open for the girls before closing it behind him. He turned away and surveyed the store. It was a gift clothes shop, and it did not look like they might find anything useful in there. But they never knew until they looked. For all they knew, there could be an RPG in there, and it was very, very unlikely, although it could be handy. Well, this is a bust, Clementine admitted, Wizard placing her Glock 17 back into her back pocket, that there was no sign of danger. Well, you never know when you find something useful. Let's just have a look around, Lee suggested. But Wizard, while speaking, he had his hands focused on the few jackets hanging on the clothes rack. He made his way over there and took off a black leather jacket, looked very similar to the one they used to have back in the motor inn, but he ended up losing it one day when he and Kenny were doing a supply run in Macon. It got snagged on a sharp pole and was forced to take it off in order to escape. Lee then took both of his duffel bags for a moment, and before the coat hanger got off his jacket, he decided to put it on. He remembered what Jane told him about having a nice leather jacket, and how they were tough to bite through. To his relief and comfort, the jacket fitted him perfect. Not bad, he admitted. Wizard picking up the duffel bags and placing them back over his shoulders. Cool jacket, Sarah complimented. Wizard, she and Clementine stood together nearby. What's with the jacket? Clementine inquired. She folded her arms together across her chest. She seemed to have forgotten what Jane suggested. Remember what Jane said. A leather jacket would stop a walker from biting you, Lee explained, making his way over to the other jackets to see if they have any kid-size ones, but unfortunately there were only adult-size ones. Damn, they don't have any smaller ones. I could have gotten both of you one. You would protect you both much better. As long as we got you to protect us, Lee, I know we'll be okay, Clementine responded, with a slight smile across her face. She trusted Lee with her life and never failed to protect her. Thanks, Sweet Pea, Lee thanked, touched by her every word. He remembered back in the past and would never forget thought he would be good with kids. Although he thought that he would never, because of his ex-wife, never wanted any, he was glad to have Clementine with him. Well, let's get looking around. Let me know if you find anything. Will do, Clementine replied, making her way over towards the gift shop area to search for anything useful. But she doubted she'd find anything useful unless walkers were allergic to gifts. Sarah was unsure of what to search for this time, but she just improvised and looked around for anything useful. She first thought about that silver ward gun that she was going to take, but she remembered it was only a prop, and she continued looking nevertheless. After searching the entire store for a few moments, the trio regrouped, and in the front of the store did not have anything useful other than the jacket Lee required. They were searching the stores, and they needed to check and decided to make sure to make their way over to the Renderous Point. Luke, Mike, and Bonnie just stood outside of the town. Wizard turned her attention towards the path when three familiar faces made their way over to them, and by the looks of it, they made such good progress than they did. Lee was now wearing a new jacket and was carrying 2 duffel bags that looked like they were slowing him down slightly. Wow, looks like you found some things, Bonnie stated. She turned to face them and folded her arms together. What do you all find? A store full of food and drinks, Lee answered. Wizard, he stopped for a moment to adjust the straps on his shoulders. We got a lot of stuff. How about you guys? We found some medical supplies that could be good for the wounds, you know. Mike and Luke got, Bonnie said, turning her attention towards Sarah for a moment, who was eating a candy bar. Sarah merely stared back as she swallowed her own food down. She pulled out another candy bar from her pocket and offered it to Bonnie. Do you want a candy bar? Sure, thanks. Bonnie thanked and kindly accepted the candy bar from her. She could not remember the last time she had ate any candy. Need a hand with those bags? Mike offered, when he could see that Lee was struggling slightly. That would be nice, Lee admitted, taking off one of the duffel bags from around his shoulders that caused a lot of weight to be lifted from his body. He waited for Mike and AJ to hand over towards Luke before he gave them any of the duffel bags for them to carry. As Lee knew it, Mike was the strongest out of all of them and had no problem carrying a bag. Well, what's the plan for now? Bonnie asked, turning her attention towards Lee for an answer. Lee folded his arms for a movement and needed to think, but when he remembered that they were continuing their journey to Wellington, the safe zone he had heard there may be a great place for them to live. We should continue on our way to Wellington. It's the best chance we got. No one really got the chance to say anything about this plan, but as Lee turned away and making his way back towards the way they came, but instead of going down the right path, which is where they came from, he turned to the left and headed north. The others had followed suit and walked together in a line. Luck was beginning to turn on their side now that they had all these supplies that keep them going for a long while. With everyone together, the group continued making their way towards north through the cold weather of the forest. And now the snow had pressed their feet against each time they moved. They could not wait to get somewhere warm and out of the cold for good.